Cats, cops, and C4. "Open them up, deputy!" Chief Bowman orders, and Specialist Barnabas pulls down the trigger. The feedback on the weapon was just a slight amount of kick to let him know it went off and a few mechanical clunks. He then reorients his aim and fires again. From his vantage point, he could see much of the action. The street being fought over T-boned into a large apartment complex, and he was on a balcony halfway up with an excellent view of most of the fighting. Sure, the groups in the alleyways weren't in his line of fire, but the barriers were well and truly in range. Granted, they were at the extreme upper range of the weapon. There's a sweet spot for how fast you can launch a rapidly expanding explosive before it just becomes impractical. 2, 1. He counts down before his first target shatters with the largest pieces sent skipping back. The slight haze that was blocking plasma shots is dispelled, and before the other side can capitalize on it, their own siege barrier goes up as well. Targets down. Want me on standby for more hard points? Yes, I want any heavy weapons, ships and shields they use to fight to go down. Avoid casualties, but deny them their toys. Chief Bowman orders him. Confirmed. Happy hunting, Barnabas says as he starts scanning the areas. As far as he can tell, there are 2 general engagement zones. The most direct one is to the left half of the divide. The alleyways and roads lead into a cul-de-sac with dozens of buildings flush with the gang's sign. 2 interlocking circles, one a red so dark it's almost black, the other one, more a ring than a circle, a bright cherry red instead. It clashes horribly with itself, but to some species it probably looks very ominous and impressive. The other gang is pouring back to what looks like a multi-floor manse or townhouse. Their symbol is dark purple, a pair of triangles interlocking into a sideways hourglass shape. Perhaps the gangs are fighting over color theory or geometry. Are rounded or pointed shapes better? He muses to himself. He sees a large vehicle emerge from behind one of the buildings in the cul-de-sac and checks the range. No good. "Chief, I need to move. There's some kind of vehicle emerging from the Red Girl's lair and it's out of range for this device. I have other ordnance, but nothing I can control so well as this." What are the downsides of this movement? "I won't be able to track both halves of the battlefield. I'll be pointed at the red team rather than both red and purple," Barnabas says, and there's a slight growl. "Do it," she says, and he nods before turning on all the safeties and setting the rifle into standby mode. In this state, it was effectively a club, and if damaged, would deliberately fry the triggering mechanism for the explosives. Otherwise, the weapon was just too dangerous to casually tote around. The Undaunted as a whole weren't completely trusting of shrinking technology yet. They were getting there, though. Still, it never hurt to have a few extra precautions, especially if it was to a device that was strapped to your back as you initiated a teleport with the help of a link in a Kutha chain attached to the belt. A lot of the new techniques still made a lot of the boys somewhat nervous. Oh, sure, they were cool, but how long until they were used against them? Why hadn't they already faced them to absurd degrees? Sure, the occasional tournament and isolated incidents made it clear that no one in the Undaunted was breaking trail when it came to galactic power, but the sheer lack of it was suspicious. Everyone was waiting for the other boot to drop, and as he sets up the boomstick to watch over the Red Gang, he can't help but feel that it's already in motion and just about to hit. "Chief, come in?" "Yes, Deputy?" Chief Bowman asks. "I don't have any proof beyond paranoia, but I have a very, very bad feeling. Like I've got a foot in the grave already. Be on alert. This is even worse than when Officer Score's vehicle was sabotaged." Barnabas says into the communicator as his every neck hair starts to stand up and his heart begins to pound. The danger is closer and closer by the second. Yes, this is far more dangerous than mere vehicle sabotage. A woman states from behind him, and as he turns, a fist slams into him and he's sent careening off the rooftop. The blow dazes him, But pulling on Axiom to shield himself is almost reflexive at this stage, and when he slams into the ground, he's still in one piece, just badly bruised. He looks up and sees a woman staring down at him from above. Dark purple hair, severe expression, galactic standard physique of goddamn, but his every instinct is screaming danger. She's watching, judging, observing. This is useless. He remarks out loud as he opens his pocket armory and places the boomstick and its magazines in there. He then double secures the armory. That was his entire grace period, as in the next nanosecond he's twisting out of the way of a fist rocketing for his face so fast he can actually see the air around it distort. She pauses, her left arm outstretched and next to his head, with the shock wave of the blow having cracked the building behind him by 5 paces. "You're not with this riffraff. Why are you protecting them?" he asks her, trying to get a handle on the situation and the woman who just tried to punch his head into chunky salsa. "I was paid my weight and height to engage anyone that breaks the stalemate. You shattered the barriers. That was balance. Then you turned to fight against one side above the other. That is not balance. Chank, get away from her." Her referencing being paid her height and weight means she's an empty-hand mercenary. She's deadlier unarmed than you are with your entire armory ready. Chief Bowman calls out before the woman's hand blurs, and Chank takes a step back as his communicator is sliced in two right out of the breast pocket. His hand scrambles up and he pauses as he realizes that this woman had so much control over the blow that she didn't even scratch the shirt as she split the device under it and sent the pieces flying out. "Running is pointless, isn't it? You're faster than me and no doubt you're able to track teleportation," he asks as he zips his jacket all the way up and then buttons it closed. "A good guess. Now make your piece human. I'm afraid you're not going to buck the trend of your race dying young and stupid," she says as her stance widens. So does his own as his arms come up into a semi-boxing stance. "No weapon? No point. You're too close for me to get anything out effectively," he answers, and for a moment she is still, her long hair glistening and glimmering. Wait, why is he so focused on... Her spear hand aimed to his stomach is barely dodged, but her nails tear open the jacket and low-profile fiber armor. He's left bleeding but alive. She then continues to try and use her left hand to slice him open. Axiom dances along her fingernails and sends out shock waves that cut into the concrete as Barnabas contorts from side to side like a maniac in an attempt to keep ahead of the razor wind she's kicking up at him one-handed. "Is dodging all you can do?" she asks him in a bland and unimpressed tone. "Is scratching all you do?" he volleys back. "Well, at least you have some courage. Fool courage, but courage nonetheless. At least you don't shame the ancient legacy of the Tret with cowardice human," she remarks before suddenly contorting and catching a laser beam that she twists and slams into Barnabas's head, to no effect. "So that's what the brand does. Well played." His hand snaps up to try and grab hers, but a handful of grease smoke is easier to keep a grip on. It seemed the smart thing to do. The galaxy favors lasers and plasma, so defending against that is just sensible. Sensible, yes. You're still 1,000 years too young to be a threat to me, boy, she remarks before her left hand blurs out and he has no time to dodge. He's sent tumbling backwards by an open hand strike and he has to pull on the Axiom hard to blunt the impacts from bouncing down the tarmac. He keeps his head though, and as he rises he has a pair of handguns ready. He has no illusions about how vulnerable this woman is to gunfire. She's too fast to be caught easily. But what about distracted? They're still loud, still stink if you're vulnerable to such things, and still give off a flash. They're still a threat, even if you are supersonic, as the woman no doubt is. "And what do you intend to do with those?" she asks as she casually walks up towards him. Despite how tempting a target the woman is, he doesn't take a shot. His stance is weighed back with his guns pointed at her, like he's bracing to shoot. He holds and holds as she approaches. Then she vanishes and he flips backwards. His dodge of the initial blow aimed at the back of his neck results in his shirt being grabbed and he's swung around. He has a split second to make a choice and does. Well, aren't we modest? The woman taunts him as he rolls upright. She had him by more than the shirt. She had him by the armor too. He had to slip out of both and is now naked from the waist up and with only a pair of pistols, a boot knife, his defensive brand and the Kutha chain on his belt, pants with the tri-tight weave shorts beneath and steel-toed boots. You're not even slightly intimidated. I think I may need to use both hands for you. He says nothing as he pulls on the axiom harder and harder, feeding it into his being, flesh, blood, bone, and soul. He focuses, pushes everything away and lets all things fall to the wayside. He must be perfect if he's to survive. Everyone on the Dauntless had hit the zone at least once during their training. The average was 4 times. Cenk's first was during a grueling test he had been dreading. He had to assemble a rifle of unknown make and model while blindfolded before removing the blindfold to fire upon and get kill shots on 3 targets. He had less than a minute. He failed once. They shifted all the variables, new gun, different targets at different speeds, directions, and distances. Then he focused. He set the record of 30 seconds. It lasted for 2 months before some skunk got 29.52. And there the record stayed to this day. She moves again. This time her entire body is swift enough to distort the air around her. He fires his first shot from his left pistol. She is forced to dodge slightly to avoid the bullet. The blooming flower of fire and blast of smoke following it is downright beautiful. He charges to force the distances closer while firing off a shot from his right pistol to further disrupt her patterns. It's a miss, but her eyes track the bullet for a few moments. They have her attention. He can control her gaze. He can win. There is no more distance between them and his arms are drawn back. She dodges the point-blank shots by all but taking flight over him. With the momentum from the gunshot still going, and some help from Cenk's shifting grip, the guns dance in his hands and he's suddenly holding them facing upwards. His thumbs depress the triggers and framing each side of the head, the bullets seem to distort upwards, followed by a dissolving flower of fire. Easily tracked in the eternal moment by both combatants, he rolls forward and barely dodges a monstrous kick that sends a shockwave down which craters the concrete where he had been standing. By the time he stands, he can sense the danger return and he melts sideways, guns coming up and firing at the woman even as she descends upon where he had been previously. She kicks the air, and it's solid under her feet. She's smiling. Her foot takes him in the side. Still too young. He rolls with the blow and rises up right and fires at her once with each gun. She doesn't dodge. She doesn't avoid them. They avoid her. Her presence is turning aside the attack. He pauses and she smiles. "What now, young one? Any fool can dodge a blow, but I don't need to," she says. "Weapons lack will, and without will, they cannot harm me." "Thank you," he says, as he starts diverting some of the axiom he's pulling on to focus into the guns, the bullet, the powder, the casing, the barrel, the trigger, the grip, the springs, the screws, the oil. All parts of the gun are infused, but before he can fire, he feels a wall of pure movement crash into him and he's set skidding backwards. "Careful now. You have my attention. You don't want to be crushed by it, do you?" she asks as she approaches slower this time. Her mere presence starts to force him back. She's done something. She's made herself unassailable. But he is undaunted and... "No," she states, and reality seems to crash. Everything is black and he realizes he's on his back and fading into consciousness. She's looking down at him, her eyes are wide for the first time. She's shocked at his recovery. "Very well, I accept." What? Did he just get married again? There are 2 payments for an empty hand, master. their weight and height in girdle, or a battle where they truly are surprised. Your resilience surprises me. So you have matched the price of my employer. I will take my leave now. Good day, young man. Keep training, and perhaps you may be capable of more still." Then she's gone, and Barnabas rises to his feet in a groan. "Don't move!" someone shouts, and he turns to see several women of varying species with red face paint on and pointing a medley of weapons at him. It's all laser and plasma, though. "I've been stripped of my non-lethal ordnance," Specialist Barnabas says. His adrenaline is still pounding, and the need to move and act and fight is screaming through him, which means I'm not taking prisoners. Stand down or die. They just stare at him for a few moments before looking up behind him. A siren starts to wail, and a police cruiser descends to Barnabas's left. The girls slowly put down their weapons as several others descend all around him, forming a clear battle line between the officers and the criminals.